This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with our own erstwhile poet laureate, Rich Michelson. Rich, the mic is yours.
They just tune in to hear you say that. They love your lulling voice. So I'm here today with two wonderful poets, Dara Wier and Dina Elenbogen, and we are here celebrating the Amherst Poetry Festival, which is running this full weekend. It started last night with a reading of all 1,789 of Emily Dickinson's poems. So stop by the Dickinson Homestead in Amherst. Today it is running poems. People are going to be reading poems. Check their website all day today, all day tomorrow, Sunday. This is a local treasure that is now going national. People are coming from all over the country. Dina's here from Chicago. Welcome.
Thank you.
To read. And let me start with Dara, because Dara Wier, as many of you know, is a local treasure. She has been in Amherst teaching at the University of Massachusetts, running the Juniper Writers Workshop, one of our great poets, and also one of our great mentors for poetry in this area. So welcome, Dara.
Thank you.
And today you are sitting at the front desk at the Emily Dickinson Museum. What are you doing?
I am. I'm sitting there to say hello to people who've come from out of town and in town, and anywhere to just welcome them and point them toward places they're looking for and stuff like that.
And if I can mention, first of all, your late husband now, James Tate, one of America's most important poets. Yeah. I bring this up because at the Emily Dickinson House, they are dedicating this year a James Tate Memorial Stage.
I noticed that. I thought that was probably Michael Medeiros' idea.
Okay, and Michael is one of the organizers of the Poetry Festival. Yeah. So you will be actually reading, I should say, on the James Tate Memorial Stage.
I guess that's sort of funny.
Tomorrow, you are at 2:55 is the time. You'll be reading with Ravi Shankar and Shira Dents. And
that's right.
And let me tell me a little bit about...
Could you go back just one second, Rich?
Yep.
When does the Poetry Festival start tomorrow? When is it available? Or is it what are the hours for this, for people who want to go and hear and see these world-famous poets and performers?
Today, it's at 1:30 to 6:30 is the Emily Dickinson Poetry Marathon. They'll be reading all day. There's workshops 4 to 5 tonight. This evening from 7:30 to 8:15, the wonderful poet Annie Finch will be reading, doing a theater piece, Letter to Emily Dickinson. And then at 8:30 to 10 is the Dead Poets Slam, a poetry slam where poets will be coming dressed as their favorite dead poet and doing a poetry slam. So that's today.
Only poets would think this is a fun idea.
And tomorrow from 10 to 6, all day on the grounds. So if you stop in at 2:55, I love these wonderful timings. You'll hear Dara Wier. If you stop in, and this is wonderful, Dina, at 1:59. Yes, Dina will be reading at 1:59.
Don't be
Do
late.
not be late. If you come at 2, too late. And I may as well mention at 4:50, the poet Richard Michelson, who some of you know, will be reading on the James Tate Memorial Stage. Dara, as you had you've published many books. You've won many awards. I mean, I'm not even going to bother, but I'll do it. We have a Guggenheim Foundation, an NEA, a Massachusetts Cultural Prize. You have a long history of work that really, I think, the playfulness of your language is just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
But your work's also changed much over the years. I think it has gone from more tactile or sensory to a more abstract or kind of surrealistic. Is that an honest impression? I mean, do you feel that of your work?
I think when you first start to write, you're timid. And in your timidity, you can shy away from what people call abstract language. And maybe I was being very shy and timid, more so when I was first writing, and then became more able to say a variety of things rather than stick very, very close to what I thought at the time was safer territory. Safer doesn't mean not dangerous, but it means like I knew that writing about bricks and tongues and hands and houses was going to be pretty easy to write about in a way and safer for me. And now I like to write about the mind.
Right. You're listening to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, on the Bill Newman Show. This is Rich Michelson. My guests are Dara Wier and Dina Elenbogen. Dara, can you read a poem? I know time's going to get away from us, so I want to make sure people get a chance to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a poem from my latest book. The book is called You Good Thing. And this poem is called The Importance of Passing Time While Moving Through Space. Walking up the aisle of a moving train as it passes under an overpass in rush hour traffic, while thinking about which way the wind's blowing, while wondering if we, us on the train, are surely aimed in the same direction as the Earth is rotating on its axis, as we're spinning at some fantastic rate none of us feel, although the sun path the Earth takes with it's going where it must go, so on. And you say a while later, as we speed by car to watch ice break in a little river, who will love me? And we let the road do its job. Who will think of me? As we scroll past a snowbank creek whose water throws back sunlight flashes as it moves fast, who will touch my hand? Nothing looks much better than two big crows and their shadows dividing, as if an extreme assembly has suddenly disbanded. Who will keep me? As our heads turn, attracted by a huddle of shaggy ponies and one banded heifer and 5 grazing deer, gathered by a tilted fence near the edge of a crossroad, who will sift for me?
Nice. That's Dara Wier. She will be reading tomorrow at 2:55 p.m. on the James Tate Memorial Stage as part of the Amherst Poetry Festival. Dara, did you and James show each other your poems? Did you?
We showed them to each other, and we often wrote at the same time in the same house, but we did not talk about them.
Did you find that reading each other's work influenced?
It's always good to have a great reader sitting right there waiting to see what you did.
Mm-hmm. So it was really knowing that, you'd be, were you each other's ideal reader?
I can't answer that.
Okay. But you shared your poems. You saw how they progressed in the time.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're both teachers in the area. I think you have probably mentored some of our most wonderful poets in this country. Have come through your program. Mm-hmm. How does teaching affect your writing?
I used to say that I thought it kept me honest. Because if I would tell somebody to do something or think about something or pay attention to something, I ought to be doing the same thing, to be honest about it. And then as years went by, I think I kind of started separating my teaching and my writing more and more, which I don't think hurt either one. I think it was just natural to do that.
Mm-hmm. And Dina, let's move to you here for a moment. You will be reading tomorrow on the James Tate Memorial Stage at 1:59.
Correct.
I really, next year we have to get the programmer in here and see how they figured this out. So you are both a poet and a memorist. Your newest book, Drawn from Water, An American Poet, An Ethiopian Family, An Israeli Story. Tell us a little bit about your newest book. So this is about Operation Moses, which was what?
Operation Moses was the airlift in 1984, which brought 7,000 Ethiopian immigrants into Israel. And I happened to be living there at the time as a young poet and was looking for what to do next, and ended up volunteering in the development town where they were being settled. And I became very attached to these young children and ended up going back to Israel after that year, pretty much every other year, to follow up on these families to see if Israel had really become their home or not. And so it became kind of an obsession. And it also shifted my writing a little bit at the time from poetry to memoir. I felt like I needed a larger canvas to write about what was happening at the time, and that poetry was only doing so much. It ended up being, I tried to be a dutiful journalist at one point. I wanted the world to know what was happening with this community, but it ended up being more of a poet's memoir. And that was really what I had to offer. So it is poetic, it brings poetry into it, and I realized that I wrote from the point of view of a poet rather than an objective journalist or anthropologist.
And you were writing poetry while you were in Israel.
I was also writing poetry at the same time, yeah.
And the book seems to me very current today, both with our own immigration issues that we're dealing with and what's going on in Israel today.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, your feelings about, are things getting worse, better over there? Are they having some of the same immigration issues we are?
I think things are getting better for some, worse for others. The children who I followed, who are now in their 30s and 40s, and they have their own children, they're doing very well. So I felt like I had to constantly go around the country to get a realistic view of things. They consider themselves Israeli. They don't feel any discrimination. However, in May, there were thousands of people marching in the street after this Ethiopian man was beaten up by police for simply loitering. So again, we felt like it was very similar to what's happening in the United States. Mm-hmm. And there is what has become institutionalized segregation and racism. And I don't think anything has changed so much. I just think this community has developed their own voice. And the people who were born in Israel and who have been through the army feel that they have the same rights. And so they're not putting up with what their parents put up with in terms of not getting the same level of education and, feeling like they're living on the periphery of society. So I don't feel like there's been that much of a change, but instead of silent protesting, which was the case in the 80s and 90s, now people are out on the street.
Given that this book is about immigrants, how did it make you feel when Netanyahu said Israel will accept no Syrians?
Horrible. I mean, it's it's terrible. Yeah, it was very disappointing and embarrassing.
Are you still, are you writing poetry now as well?
Yeah, I just finished a new manuscript called The Language of Rivers. And
is it influenced by the political situation that you're seeing in Israel or the Black Lives Matter in the U.S. with?
No, my first collection, Apples of the Earth, dealt more with what was happening in Israel. This is a very different collection. It's dealing with issues that are happening around this country, but and sort of nature poetry, different kinds of things, but it's not dealing directly.
Read us a poem, if you would, so that we make sure that we hear your voice.
Okay. This year, you sewed buttons on trousers and blouses, didn't climb Kilimanjaro, make poems, buttons on vests and sweaters. You didn't leave the country, take off your clothes on Table Mountain, buttons on slippers and slacks. I broke zippers with my teeth, climbed Masada, rode out of fashion with my peers. My ankle turned to the east, I ran to the west, buttons fell from shorts and jackets, buttons the size of fruit, translucent as the moon, buttons hanging by threads.
You were just listening to Dina Elenbogen, who is reading at the Amherst Poetry Festival tomorrow at, where's your time again?
1:59.
Yes. We got to remember
so
that.
I get 16 minutes because it ends at 2:15.
You can go from there to 2:55 to listen to Dara Wier read. 4:50, Richard Michelson will be on stage. Many other great poets. please go to the Emily Dickinson Museum website for a full list of the day's activities, Sunday's activities, today's activities. It's absolutely the perfect way to spend this weekend. Our area is just filled with a wealth of poets and literature, and we should celebrate it. I thank you both for coming today.
Thank you so much. Richard.
I hope that people could come and listen to your work as well. And thank you, Bill.
And thank you, Rich. And thank you, our listeners. We'll be right back.